Just explain to me what the concept of blockchain is and what cryptocurrency is, and how you don't see of it the way that most financiers, most economists, most governments see it. You see it as a way to almost, it's a spiritual connection for you. So what is blockchain and how do you take it out of the realm of finance?
Yeah. So blockchain technology is basically a decentralized ledger that can do many different things. It can store transactions, it can store information, and it's based on public-private key cryptography. So in the original design of the system, everything on the system is public. Every interaction that happens is public, and everyone has the ability to, with some wherewithal and know-how, be anonymous or at least pseudo-anonymous, if they so choose to be. And so there are major implications of blockchain technology for things like, ubiquitous access to individual rights in areas where people are living under extraordinary oppression, for the sole ability that people can, be able to gain, the ability to register their contracts, their legal rights, jurisdictional services that were traditionally provided by a nation state on a piece of technology that is beyond the bounds of borders. Very similar to this is the idea of cryptocurrencies that are created on top of this, that you don't need the middlemen anymore to engage in a transaction, that you're more working through communities of people, you're more working through an immediate network.
What are the promises and the pitfalls of the concept of decentralization?
The reflections of this promise are already here in some ways. Instead of having the majority of youth culture that's engaged in different kinds of activities aligning with a political movement that is bent on creating destruction or acts of violence against other individuals, most people are aligning themselves with online groups. And in that way, it's not to say there is a reduction in violence, because emotional violence is still a form of violence. And really, the internet is just an outrage machine that is allowing people to recycle through their own traumas in a series of likes that say, I'm not good enough, or retweets that allow people to express that they too have been traumatized or felt defeated in this way. But most of these groups, even like the Pepe the Frog movement, it is a group of people that are extremely traumatized, that are all aligning with themselves and responding to the internet. They're not responding to politics. And so I think we're seeing the first phases of this decentralized wave hit, but nothing is decentralized. Decentralization is a myth. Blockchain is not decentralized. There's an idea of distribution that's happening in a way that is far greater than it has before. And distribution is happening through the digital medium, and it's happening through the physical medium. And people who are aligning with different digital rights groups are not necessarily distributing, or digital extremism are not necessarily aligning themselves with political extremism, although some of them might be, and there's overlap.
Can you give me an example of that? What do you mean by that?
Well, it's the same thing with activist groups, that we have different groups of people who are all engaged in forms of activism. But how many of those people are actively engaged with each other? And we're seeing the world fragment into these different communities and these different subcultures that are distributing themselves, but not necessarily decentralizing themselves. So it's the idea that we have these sub-communities of reference where people align with moral or ethical values in different ways. And every individual has their own experiences in life, which gives them a different set of overlap, which means that they might be involved in hundreds of different communities, but all of those communities may be unique to an individual.
Why are governments scared of cryptocurrency or of these blockchain ledgers? What is it about it that scares a nation state, or what a nation state can do?
Governments are scared in general. Governments are run by people who are scared. Governments are scared. They are units of fear. And the people who run, and I'm not saying this in a threatening way, I'm saying this in a loving way, that I am sorry that they are scared. Their position of power is an illusion, but what that illusion represents is their suffering. Our leaders are suffering. And if that's not obvious to people now, in the wake of everything that's happened recently, I don't know what is.
How does trust fit into that dynamic if our leaders are constantly afraid of losing power or losing control. And we, the environment, our ecosystems, our communities are suffering from that fear. Where does trust fit into that dynamic, and how can we regain it as a community of leaders and citizens and an ecosystem and an environment that we live in?
We have to trust ourselves, and we have to trust each other, and we have to understand.
How do we do that? You can look at any continent on Earth right now, and there are civil unrest. There are governments that are accused of being corrupt or being there by false means. So I can understand why it's important to work on yourself and to heal yourself in order to engage in that community, in that civil responsibility. But how do we do it, Toni? How do we regain that trust that has been lost over decades? It's been eroded over decades.
Do something kind for at least one person a day.
How does that change this discourse and the way that societies are run? How does that change the G20? How does that change the Davos meetings? How does that change election gerrymandering? How does that work?
I'm not sure that we need to change those arenas. I think those arenas are actually responding to the change that's happening in the world. And they have to, because what people aren't realizing is that their way of being, and they are realizing this, their way of being is phasing. It's just phasing, and that's why people are gripping and grappling for power where they can. This is why governments are trying to gerrymander information from major companies, because the rails in which they have been running reality are starting to create new tracks. And so I don't necessarily think it's about saying, it's like saying, how do we make a faster horse? We don't need a faster horse, we need a car. And so I think to sit here and talk about all the ways in which we need to engage more in these processes that are so archaic and monolithic, we don't need another monolith. And any device that becomes monolithic immediately becomes an obstruction of human potential.
Do you vote?
I don't. So there's an extreme way to say this and then a polite way to say this, which is...
I'll take both.
Yeah, I don't engage in the current institutional political realm in any means possible.
Wow. So you actively try not to participate in what arguably is your civic duty?
I would say that my civic duty is that I take care of my neighbors when they get sick, and I do little things like I bring in their trash. I help elderly people with gardening. I've worked in hospice. I don't do the things that I do for people because I need validation. I do it because I love them.
Toni Lane Casserly, thank you so much for talking to the Doha Debates. I'm just going to shake your hand. I'm really appreciative of your time, truly.